Hi, I am Sabina Simonson, the Outreach Services and Volunteer Coordinator for the Talbot County Free Library, and you are watching The Library Presents Adolescence and Substance Abuse, the Times They Are Changing. Our speaker is Jane Fitzgerald, who is the current Executive Director of the Talbot Partnership. She holds a BA in psychology and has spent her career studying family life and adolescent behavior. Jane is passionate about spreading the message about the harm of substance abuse on the adolescent brain and advocating for community support of more opportunities for youth engagement. I'm very pleased to present Jane Fitzgerald.
Thank you so much, Sabina, and it is such an honor to be here at the library and talking to you guys about an issue that I'm quite passionate about. Adolescence is such an untapped period of time that people have paid attention to or not, and it's one of the most exciting times. I use this title, The Times They Are Changing, for 2 points, because one, right now our adolescents are going through a time that is different from anything that we have grown up with social media and exposures that they have and the access to drugs in a way that we have no idea. And then also adolescents themselves are going through a change that they have absolutely no clue or control of, and that's part of what I'm going to be addressing right now. What was important to me as I've questioned why youth do what they do, even though we tell them over and over, and they hear the message, and yet they don't seem to be paying attention to the message, mostly with the substances that they're using and risk-taking behavior in general. And so I started doing a lot of research on substance use to begin with, and this is what I found out. And I don't know if you guys know this, but it was new to me. Wine was found over 10,000 years BC. Prehistoric man happened to figure out that when the honeybees would fill up with the honey would drip into the water, the bacteria in the water would ferment, and it would make mead, the drink that we know today as the first wine. So 10,000 years BCE, people were drinking wine because they happened upon this and they liked it. After that, they figured out how to make beer. And really what happened with beer was they were making breads with the fermentation of breads, and they found that the beer connecting with the liquids, water, would make beer. And so even though it became really popular with the Babylonians in 2700 BCE, there's been marks that beer has been around since about 7000 BCE. Something that I thought was kind of interesting, and I was thinking about it also, why beer and wine were popular and beverages that they used a lot, was because that was one of the safer drinks that you could have. Water wasn't necessarily good for you, if it was contaminated. And here you had these beverages that lasted a long time and tasted good and, believe it or not, made you feel good. In the Bible, there's a passage that said, because they learned between beer and wine, "Give strong drink to him that is ready to perish, and wine to those that be of heavy hearts. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more." So here we had alcoholic beverages that were medicinal. And in the Bible, it was something that was almost encouraged. Unfortunately, what we also learned from the Bible is very early addiction issues. This is Noah. And Noah, as beloved as he was, liked his wine, and probably, if we could see his brain now, we would see that he probably suffered from a substance use or alcohol use disorder. So it's happened a long time. We have these great, wonderful properties in beverages that we can drink and last and won't hurt us as contaminated water might, but then we have this issue. So this is not a new phenomenon that we're dealing with. So this was part of my understanding. Then another part of what I found interesting in some of my research were that humans are not the only ones who get involved in substances. Almost every species out there will find their own drug of choice. The horse likes the loco weed, and unfortunately for horses and donkeys and mules and all of them, the loco weed is so dangerous to their brain, they will consume it until they die. They can't control it and they don't stop. Elephants love fermented fruit. So this one is a picture of them having a grand old time with the marula fruit, and they will actually go miles out of their way knowing that it's that time. The elephants are extremely smart, and so they know that this is the time that the fruits are going to be dropping off and fermenting, and they will go 20 miles out of their way and fight each other until they can get to the fruit and party until they look like that. This is the jaguar. I think that's a jaguar. But the jaguar, they have found the coffee plant. And what the jaguar does is they will chew on the coffee plant until they start getting hallucinogenic experiences. And they will go at it, and enjoy their hallucinogens. And actually, shamans watched the jaguars and used the coffee plant as in rituals that they do. So this was fascinating to me as I was going through this research. And it's like, okay, it's not humans. Last, which was really fun, are the dolphin, noted as probably the smartest creatures in the animal kingdom. They have figured out that if they squeeze a pufferfish, they get a narcotic high from the toxins of the pufferfish. And the videos actually show the dolphins sharing the pufferfishes, and they're enjoying their high. So understanding this helps me to sort of grasp where we are with our adolescents and what they're doing. And knowing that it's it's animal nature to do these things, we then have to pay attention to the adolescents and the trauma that we're going through right now. So then my favorite stage of life is adolescence. They are, it is a period of time of growth and opportunity that no other time in life has. And we need to embrace that. Unfortunately, we're kind of lost, as I was telling one of the participants a little bit earlier. We have only just started studying the adolescent brain, probably truly with CAT scans, MRIs, really watching the adolescent brain, only about 10 years have the studies really been going on and seeing what's happening. I'm going to share that with you. But adolescence is so exciting, and we need to embrace that and not be terrified of them, which we can be, because adolescents do really crazy things. One of the things that a study has done and shown with adolescents, and something to keep in mind, is there was a study with adolescents and adults. It was a car simulator, and what they did is they had the individuals do it by themselves, do this car simulating, driving through stop signs and this kind of thing. They did it by themselves, the teens and then the adults. And then they did it with a group of people watching them, sort of hanging out with them. And one of the things that they found was adolescents were significantly more apt to do risk-taking behavior and take chances when they were around other people. When they had their friends with them, they were doing things that they did not do on their own. Conversely, adults did not do that. How an adult drove in the simulator by themselves was pretty much the same if there was someone around. Something to pay attention to is you see these 3 boys going crazy. Chances are if it was just one, he wouldn't be doing it. This one, how many times have we seen an adolescent do something like this and you're like, what were they thinking? And the thing is, the adolescents aren't thinking. As I'll show you shortly, they do things based on emotion and drive and just sheer exhilaration of it, and it's not until after the fact that they might possibly think about what they're doing. So we see stuff like this, you're like, oh my gosh. Then we have social engagement, and these young girls might be wanting to impress the boy in the background. Would they be doing this on their own? Social pressure, whatever. Adolescents are more prone to do that, and it's not until afterwards that they're feeling miserable, but they've done it anyway. And then we succumb to the worst, where after things like what the girls are doing, and we have our adolescents doing drugs and experimenting and risk-taking and things that are beyond what their brain is capable of understanding or reaching out to. And then, as I will share in a little bit, what happens to the brain if they get this far. And our goal is to never ever let our kids get this far again. So the important thing to understand with adolescence is it is the time of life where independence is absolutely necessary. If we hold on to our children tight and don't let them grow during this period of time, our species would not survive. One of the things that is one of the greatest laments we hear about family is, oh, my daughter, who is my best friend, she stayed by my side all these years, she hit adolescence and now she won't even talk to me. They have to do that. Even if you think about it in the animal species, if they have to bond with their peers. If they don't bond with their peers, they're ostracized. If they're ostracized, they will not survive. And so we get to this point where we need to encourage independence, but at the same time understand that they are absolutely not even close to fully developed. And it's a fine, precarious point we have with our adolescents when we're dealing with that, but we want to teach them, and I heard a great quote from somebody, said, we're not trying to raise great children, we're trying to raise great adults. And by doing that, we have to acknowledge that they need to push for their independence, as painful as it is, and how we have to embrace them. And I use this analogy, the monarch butterfly, and if you think about it, if you were to cut open the chrysalis and the monarch butterfly did not have to go through the whole growing pain or growing experience, I guess, of getting out on its own, it would not survive. And if we think of our adolescents the same way, they have to take risks, they have to become independent, otherwise they won't survive as well-functioning adults. We need to embrace that thought and then understand what's happening with the substance use and other risky behavior that our adolescents are going through. But I like this analogy when I think about it with our kids. So in our recent studies, this I thought was, I've seen lots of brain images, and it shows the adolescent brain from age 10 to 25, and it's like all these little color things, and it didn't really embrace nearly as much as what I wanted to see. And then I found this about a week ago, and I think that everybody should see this. This is inside the teenage brain. As you can see, adolescents are prone to high-risk behavior. That's out of their control. That's just part of who they are. And so when we understand this, and if you can see the prefrontal cortex, the teen is still immature, prone to high-risk behavior. The amygdala, a teen is more impulsive. The parietal lobe, I think I pronounced that wrong, don't process information effectively. The ventral striatum, the teens are more excited by reward than consequence. So keeping all of this in mind is really important. And then the hippocampus, there's a tremendous learning curve for adolescents that we see them and they look like mini adults, but there's really so much growing inside. And so if you imagine them like this, still growing, you see something like this and you get a little frustrated, but you're like, they're just little kids. So you kind of laugh at it a little bit, but just imagine your teenager like this, because At the age of 12, give or take, an adolescent's brain is only 20% developed, still has 20%, it's 80% developed. So there's still 20% of growing that the adolescent brain goes through. So when they do crazy things and they don't know that they're not thinking about it, imagine them as little kids like this. This diagram, so what's also happening in the adolescent brain, and I'm not even sure if this is really clear. It was hard for me to come up with something that kind of just shared it. Imagine in our brains we have all these little tendrils, and we have to prune them. As they grow up, it happens automatically in an adolescent brain. The brain will naturally just prune, but it prunes by what is being used. So if you have an adolescent who's really getting involved in a foreign language or sports, this is a period of time where the brain is focusing on those things and will prune those things, and that's how the brain is going to be in adulthood. You have an adolescent who's drinking or getting into drugs, the brain prunes that. And this probably, as semi-unclear as it is the number one reason why I emphatically feel that under no circumstances should our adolescents get a hold of any kind of substances, ideally till they're 25. I know that's not going to happen, but I shouldn't say that, that's not fair. But at least into their early 20s, because what we're doing to our brain during adolescence will affect us for the rest of our lives. So, understanding all of this and knowing all of this, then what? Why do youth try drugs? Why do they do it to begin with? So we understand why it's important for them not to. Now we also have to understand why they do. First thing is to have fun. Maybe they've modeled, parents, or they've seen it on TV. How often do we see the happy drunk on movies or whatever, and they think, oh, that's how you have fun. So they want to have fun. They want to fit in. Getting involved and belonging into their peer group, as I said earlier, is extremely important because that's the survival of the species. They have to get along with their peers because we adults, the generations above us, we're going to die off. They need to get along with their peers. So they need to fit in. And if fitting in means doing drugs or alcohol, that's what they're going to do. To feel better, we know that a glass of wine kind of relaxes you. It might make you feel better. We've learned from all our animal species and everything else that we saw already, it makes you feel better. Not for an adolescent, it shouldn't. We need to give them alternatives. Kids will take drugs to do better. They'll take stimulants to stay awake and study all night long. They take the steroids and other drugs to help them do better in sports and things like that. So that's another reason why they do drugs. To self-medicate. I have a friend who in high school developed schizophrenia. He didn't know it. He was going mad with the voices in his head, and he started taking marijuana to medicate and try and get the voices out, and that's not atypical. To look and feel grown up. I mean, it's just one of those things they do. You see the adults smoking their cigarettes, the kid wants to smoke the cigarettes, and it makes them feel and look grown up. To rebel. Some kids who have grown up in very, very tight limitations, they're like, fine, I'm going to be with my peers and I'm going to rebel. That's another reason why youth try drugs. To relieve boredom, we've heard that so much here on the shore. There's nothing to do. So they relieve boredom. For pure curiosity, wow, I hear all of this stuff about LSD and the high that you get from that or whatever. So pure curiosity, they'll try it, not knowing how it's affecting them. And then ignorance. They just, may not even know what it is that they're taking or what they're doing. So these are the reasons that I came up with you try drugs and what studies have shown, and I think that it fills in everything. And not one of these reasons could not be given an alternative, a safer, healthier alternative. And that's what I think is really important and what I want to share today. The Talbot Partnership right now is debating whether or not we should be for preventing substance use disorders or substance abuse. The substance use disorder is actually the medical term that is used now, but I really liked this definition of substance abuse because it's very simple and it makes sense and it's very clear. Things that we don't think about that our kids are using also. They sniff the Sharpies. I've heard that they will sniff the propane in a grill. They'll find anything that they can figure out, how to get some kind of stimulant. So it's the harmful use of any substance for mood-altering purposes. And I really like that definition as we're embracing all of that, so I wanted to share that. So next, we are looking at what some of our risk factors are, which is another reason, to look at what's going on. As early as preschool, elementary school, aggressive behavior, academic difficulties, and poor social skills are early indicators that if not addressed early, the child could become a substance user later on. So that's something to pay attention to when we have just our little ones around. And so that's a risk factor. Without a doubt, we know that as far as addictions are concerned, genetics is a huge reason why people develop addictions. I feel there's two strong indicators: genetics and age of first use. I do my own informal survey with anyone who's been in recovery, and I ask them, how old were you when you tried your first glass of wine, your beer, whatever? Invariably, it's between, sometimes younger than 12 or 11, usually it's 11 or 12 to 15. Just about anybody, there's not been a single person that I've talked to that is in recovery that has a substance use disorder that started later than that. Some younger, but nobody later than like 15. It's that early onset and then genetics. So one of the things to be concerned as a community member regarding genetics is you might have parents who don't drink or don't do anything, and you think, oh, I don't have that issue with my family. But maybe they don't because their great uncle was an alcoholic and they saw that. So it really is an important question to ask your family members, down the line, is there any level of substance use in our family that might have possibly been a problem? And that's something that we could key in on for our adolescents and find out if they could be at risk with a substance use disorder. We pay attention to if there's diabetes in the family. I mean, I know children probably, or early on, is there heart disease, diabetes in your family? We need to be asking, is there substance use in your family? Is that a problem? It's a disease just like the others and need to be addressed early, long before there could conceivably be a problem. Mental illness and trauma are also huge indicators of somebody getting involved in substances and then ultimately possibly developing a substance use disorder. And mental illness, it could be anxiety, not just your bipolar or schizophrenia or the more catastrophic mental illnesses that we think of. And there's a young man that I talked to with trauma who is in recovery, and it was interesting because I asked him his story, and what he said to me was there's big trauma and little trauma. And the way that he described it is your big traumas are, possibly abuse or something along those lines. What he said his experience was what he called a little trauma, and he called it his high-achieving parents. He had parents who were wonderful, wonderful parents, but they were really, really hard on him, you know, as far as expecting him to do really well all the time. And this boy was smart and he was achiever, but he couldn't keep it up. He didn't feel like he could live to his parents' expectations. And so he got into, I think it was marijuana and then methamphetamine. But he got into the drugs to escape from the trauma he was feeling by this pressure on him. So thinking along those lines, you know, embracing it all. What our kids are experiencing, understanding their brain, their rationale, they're not thinking, they're living by emotion, so all of these are layers that come to play. So what can we do? We need to empower our youth into adulthood. It is so important that we do this, and we want them to grow and flourish. To do that is giving them the responsibilities and understanding. And the number one thing that our youth need is more sleep. Studies have shown that our adolescents are not getting enough sleep, and it is extremely detrimental to them. Adolescents who don't get enough sleep are more apt to do drugs. They're more apt to suffer from depression. They're more apt to not do well in school. The thing that's the biggest challenge, though, is for whatever reason, during adolescence, their circadian rhythm has shifted a little bit. And so when they can't go to sleep at like 9 o'clock when we'd like them to, but they have to stay up later, their body has just shifted. Unfortunately, I would love to petition our schools to start letting our high schoolers and middle schoolers start later so they can sleep in. I don't know that that's going to happen just yet. That would be the ideal thing. But at whatever rate, if adolescents need to sleep till 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the weekends to make up for it, anything will help them. Sleep is the number one thing that adolescents need to avoid the risky behaviors to the level that we see them. The next thing that I would say is good role modeling. I think about it all the time. We tell our children what to do, and you know, always drive the speed limit, and then they'll be in the car with you and you're driving 25 miles over the speed limit. They're watching that, they know that, and it's not do what I say, it's do what I do. So we want to be good role models. We want to be responsible drinkers if we're going to drink. You know, we want to be responsible in all aspects because the adolescent brain is constantly processing this. I also got this picture because when my daughter was small, and I think it was a wonderful thing, I was taught that what you want to do is when your child goes out, give them, they're innocent before they're guilty, but you want to keep tabs on them. So have them kiss you when they come in at night. And that way you can smell anything that's on them, you can see if maybe they're wobbling, but they think it's corny and oh, you're just being sappy, Mom. No, this is my one request is I want you to give me a kiss when you come in at night. And that's something that you can do, kind of giving them their freedom, but at the same time really paying attention to what they might be going on with. Another thing that parents can do, or friends. This is a conversation, this was going around Facebook, and I really liked it. When my daughter was younger, I did something else, but not the whole conversation part, for the most part, but the little X at the bottom. So one thing that's really important for adolescents is to save face with their peers. You know, they've got to fit in, they can't be out there, but they don't necessarily want their friends to know that they're not going to do something because they could get bullied or who knows. So what this dad did is he and his son had come up with an agreement that if the son texted him an X, that meant that the son wanted to get out of wherever he was. And so they came up with some kind of arrangement where the dad would then call his son and say, there's been an emergency at home, I need to come and get you, or whatever else they had devised. When my daughter was young, we came up with a thing where she was somewhere where she didn't want to be. She called me up and she said, oh, Mom, I'm sorry, I forgot my keys. And as soon as I heard that, I knew she was somewhere she didn't want to be. So then I'd become the main mom. I can't believe it, Natalie. This is the last time I told you, you know, I'm coming to get you because this is it, you know. She could hang up the phone. I guess they do it now like that. You know, hang up the phone and complain about me, how horrible I was. She couldn't drink or do anything else that was going on there because I was coming to get her in 15 minutes, and then she could save face. These are things that we can do for our kids. That's the example. These are drug tests, and I will say that I do not personally believe that drug testing your child is the way to go. It is first of all, the drug tests don't show up half the new stuff that's coming. It's not worth it, but you can use the drug test with your youth. Have it sitting on the counter when the boyfriend comes to pick the daughter up, when the boys are all hanging out. Oh my gosh, what's that? Yeah, my mom's threatening to drug test me, so I gotta watch it. Another way that our kids can hang out with their friends, do their thing, and then have it out, but still stay with their peers and move on. And the last thing that I believe strongly for our youth, especially in a beautiful place like Talbot County, is community. I listened to a wonderful young man speak, and he said that he was going to give up on everything, but it was his girlfriend's father that said something to him that changed his world. Sheriff Gamble tells the story about it was the teachers in the school that had confidence in him. He was on the verge of being expelled, and the teachers had faith in him and kept going. We put a lot of pressure on our parents, and parents are absolutely very important, but it's the rest of the community. It's going into the store and the young person who's waiting on you, thank them and tell them how polite they were. The little things that we as a community can do will help our kids more than you ever realize. This just came to mind when I had a birthday, and one of my sisters had all the family members write a story, and one of my nephews, who's kind of struggled with a lot of things, said, "Tia Jane, I know you don't remember this at all, but one day we were in the car and you were just having a conversation with me, and there was just, he said there wasn't anything really that was in the conversation, but it was just something that you cared and were paying attention to me. It made all the difference in the world." And he wrote this several years after that conversation had happened. So you don't know when it's going to matter. So the community at large has to be here for our adolescents. In my presentation, I'm hoping that you understand where they are. And so we as community, because my kids are grown, your guys' kids might be grown, or not grown yet, or no children at all. But we together can make a difference, and that's what I think for our children. And this is me. If you want any further information, I appreciate it.
Wow, thank you so much, Jane. This was a fabulous program in the inside of the adolescent brain. Come and see us at the library, and don't forget, keep watching MCTV. Bye-bye.